Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I would like to discuss how Boris Johnson may view the David Cameron scandal that I've talked about a couple of times already. Is really blowing up and filling the media with stories of Tory Sleaze being back and worse than ever, as well as giving the opposition a crucial line of attack which is not battered away by the pandemic. Does Johnson view it as a serious problem, as some Conservative MPs do, or maybe even as an opportunity? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, to say that politics in the UK right now is very weird would, I think, be an understatement. Too often, I think people have fallen into the trap recently of trying to frame the likely trajectory of the Conservative Party's actions through what is best for the country, or at least their party. But Boris Johnson doesn't care in the slightest for either country or party, and so you always have to consider that he will pursue courses of action that will damage both badly if it helps him personally. He is a would-be dictator who has surrounded himself with toadies and powerful allies whom he pays off with our public money in order to maintain his grip on power. He may be a little less extreme than Donald Trump, but he is similar to him in many ways. And just as Trump damaged the credibility of the Republican Party that propelled him to power as soon as he realised it would no longer keep him in power, so too Johnson may well not mind in the slightest about pressing the self-destruct if his end comes sooner than he would like. The main difference is that I can see Johnson resigning rather than being forced to leave office, albeit not right now, of course. But my point is that the second that Boris Johnson doesn't see himself as contesting the next general election is the same second that he will not care about his actions doing long-term damage to the party's credibility during that next campaign. And it's with this in mind that I want to consider how exactly Boris Johnson sees the Cameron scandal. Now, naturally, he wants to protect his own government from the damage, which is why he has blocked a genuinely independent inquiry. Instead, he's ordered his own inquiry, led by a lawyer with a vested interest in giving the offending scheme a clean bill of health. But this has given the Labour opposition the opportunity to call out Tory Sleaze again, something that contributed to the sinking of John Major's Tory government in 1997. And it's certainly concerning some Conservatives. So Sir Bernard Jenkin, who's an ally of Boris Johnson, has written publicly of the need for the Prime Minister to tackle this crisis now or risk alienating voters, especially in the red wall seats. And for him to write this publicly, he obviously feels it's an urgent crisis for the party. And Jenkins' fears may well be real. Part of Boris Johnson's personal popularity in the industrial north of England is down to the fact he's seen as looking out for the ordinary worker. Oh, he's just like a normal bloke, isn't he? Yeah, I know. Absolutely incredible. This Etonian, born with a silver spoon in his mouth, who has never had to pay for any failure in his life, of which there have been many, and would retire into considerable luxury when either he or his party decides that it's time to go. This man who said he cannot get by on a prime ministerial salary. I mean, and there's little serious prospect of legal repercussions when he does go. This man is seen as a champion of the people. If the scandal of Tory Sleaze takes hold, and Labour are doing everything to make sure it does, then that facade that Johnson has created around his persona may well be exposed. Now, at this point, those seats that the Conservatives currently rely upon for their majority could disappear in smoke. Johnson may or may not care about this, depending on his long-term political plans. But senior Conservative MPs like Jenkins will care. Because, as I've said before, the David Cameron scandal is just one example of this sleaze. It's not even the case that exposed a load of others. Other examples have been on show for a year now. I've talked about many of them. But they haven't really taken hold amongst the public. But this might now make it an issue in Britain. If it does, then it's really simple to show how bad this corruption is. If people get interested in this particular scandal and then people show them, well, actually, there's this and this and this, they may get interested in those as well and see just how deep this corruption goes. We have ministers who are creating companies for themselves and their families in which they have a stake, making out public contracts for those companies. The Health Secretary has written out public contracts for himself. We've had other ministers do the same. We have senior officials, some paid, some not paid, advising the government to favour companies that they either have a stake in or are employed by. This is the result of the reform to the civil service that Boris Johnson authorised Dominic Cummings to carry out. Replace public servants, people who are just interested in doing best for the country, with spivs who will spend their time working out how to spend public money in a way that benefits them personally. And if people in the deprived parts of the northern England who took leave of their senses in 2019 and voted Tory see this, then it'll be next to impossible to win them back in 2024. Even the Conservatives, if they somehow manage to hide the damage of Brexit, which they're trying to do behind COVID, hide the fact that the promised investments aren't happening, which they'll also probably hide behind COVID, hide the fact that they're selling off the NHS into private hands, which they're definitely hiding behind COVID, blames the worsening wages and job prospects on some other bugger, the EU or COVID or maybe even Labour. None of that will matter if Tory Sleaze becomes a widespread saying again. And so you'd think that Boris Johnson will want to take this really seriously and stamp it out before it takes hold. Mind you, even if he did see it as a serious problem, he'd have to do a better job of stamping this out than he did of persuading people that there shouldn't be another Scottish independence referendum. I may be talking about this more this week, but needless to say that we've had a reliable poll now that shows support for such a referendum at over 50%. And there'll be some people going, it's been over 50% for some time. I don't just mean in Scotland, I mean throughout the UK. But is Johnson even attempting to deal with this issue, even if that attempt is ultimately a poor one? Is he even trying to deal with the crisis? Judging by a bit of an interview I saw yesterday with Cabinet Minister George Eustace, not at all. Eustace has now gone on record as saying that David Cameron broke no rules and that what he did was entirely acceptable. Now, there are two important things that were said there. One, broke no rules. Now, in point of fact, were there rules to be broken, then it's ministers and officials who will have broken them, not so much a private lobbyist who isn't really bound by many rules to break. But note that you may imagine that Boris Johnson is attempting to deal with the crisis by setting up a fake inquiry. Phil, he's set up this independent inquiry, you'll say. That's him dealing with the crisis. Yet here Eustace is saying very clearly that Cameron broke no rules. Now, the standard government response to a crisis like this and a question like this, if you're trying to use a fake inquiry as a smokescreen, is to say, look, there's an independent inquiry. We've set up an independent inquiry to get to the bottom of this. That is now underway, and the results will indicate if anyone has broken any rules. We will then take lessons learned. Easy, simple response, answers the question. It's not evasive, and yet doesn't answer the question. Eustace did not do this. Instead, he didn't just exonerate his cabinet colleagues, but even the former Prime Minister at the heart of this scandal. He has undermined the credibility of that inquiry by saying that the subject of that inquiry did nothing wrong, either legally or morally. Now, could it be that Eustace is just too dumb to have given the appropriate response? Maybe, but he didn't just randomly turn up to that interview. He was dispatched by Number 10 and briefed on what to say. This was not an unexpected question. It was the question that was anticipated. The answer that he gave is the answer that Johnson and his advisors told him to give. The second statement that Cameron did what he did was acceptable. Now, again, looking at it from those red wall former Labour voters who switched to the Tories in 2019 because, they obviously wanted to trade low-paid jobs for no jobs at all, what's been said here is that this level of corruption is fine. See, people might look at this situation and accept that no rules were broken. They may believe that, but then they'll think to themselves, well, okay, so now the rules should be changed because they're obviously not good enough. Because this sort of behaviour is clearly morally wrong. After all, that's what MPs are for, isn't it? Society identifies a behaviour that doesn't fit with accepted standards, and MPs respond by legislating against that behaviour. But Eustace, again, briefed by Downing Street on exactly what to say, has not said that rules were not broken, but perhaps we need to look at improving the rules, but let's just wait for the inquiry. You know, maybe we need to close some loopholes. No, he said that the behaviour was absolutely acceptable. And those responses were deliberate, as I say, and carefully considered. Unless we are to believe that Eustace is so thick that he couldn't remember the correct response when it was given to him and he just made it all up on the day. Now that suggests to me that Johnson is not at all conscious of the danger that this scandal poses to him. This means that either he sees some personal advantage in the crisis, as he has with the pandemic and Brexit, both deeply damaging to the country, but brilliant for his career, or it means that he recognises the damage that it will cause, but he's already decided that he won't be fighting the next election, so it's someone else's problem. Because it's certainly not a problem that's going to cause him any issues until that next election. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.